Richard is in California. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Ian. I was curious. I know you turned your property into a nonprofit church, so you don't have to pay property taxes.
Actually, I gave the property to the church, but that's the idea. That is one of the reasons involved in what's happening here, because members of the church support the idea of supporting the community, just not on a monopoly coercive basis. So, for instance, we have chosen to pay for services that we value, like, cleaning the roads or clearing the streets, and maybe some fire and police services, but, for instance, not the government schools. So, it's not that we're paying nothing. It's just that we're not paying all of what they're demanding.
How do you go about implementing a plan like that?
Well, you form a church. I mean, what do you mean? How do you go about that?
Go to church.shiresociety.com, and you will see that, we've made it possible for people to become members of the Shire Society Church. Your
church should probably have some sort of a mission statement. There should be, some tenets, some, beliefs, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I really am I answering your question?
Well, I'm just curious because you had to do some kind of government paperwork to do it, correct?
You're talking about the nonprofit status. So you don't need government paperwork to form your own church. It's your right, your freedom of religion to be able to form your own church, Richard, just by nature of the fact that you have the freedom, supposedly, in the United States.
Churches came before the IRS.
To believe in whatever kind of God, that you want to, and to have whatever belief system that you choose. So you don't have to ask any government permission to form a church, but if you do want to have some sort of thing that has nonprofit status, then you would have to likely form some kind of a nonprofit corporation with the state.
Because otherwise they would just throw liens on the property.
Well, you can't buy just by forming a church doesn't give you the ability to buy property in the state system, right? Because the church is an idea, just like the state is an idea, and the people who believe in the state, they have certain rules that they want to follow, and so in order to have the church own property, the church also has to have some way to interact in the system, which is sort of one of the reasons for having things like a nonprofit, a corporation that is a nonprofit. Does that make any sense? What I'm saying there?
It does, and that's what I was looking for. Could you like maybe post something up with kind of just like a dummy's guide to doing it, or
Nope, I can't. There's all kinds of guides and suggestions and ideas out there. Just look into starting a church or a free church. For instance, there's a whole free church movement, which is a group of churches who have realized that incorporating is probably not the best way to form their religious association, because asking for permission from the state in order to exist seems like a really unreligious, ungodly thing to do, in that it puts the state in between God and the church, so to speak. So, Richard, I think you should look for free churches and starting a free church, and try to avoid the advice that suggests that you go out there and beg the government for permission, because there are churches that do that. In fact, most churches do that, which is one of the founding ideas behind the Shire Free Church, is that the people who are involved in the Shire Free Church are frustrated in a lot of cases with these sort of, for lack of a better term, state churches, churches that are organized at the pleasure of the state, that they didn't create the church from the get-go on its own. They created it with the blessings of the state. They begged for permission in order to have a church, and I think that's coming at it from the wrong perspective. And I thank you, Richard, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. So the idea there being that you create the church, that's just something that you can do with people without having to ask anyone's permission. And I don't like the idea of asking the state for permission for anything, and putting the idea of the state, which is sort of like a false god to me, in between real God, if you will, which of course I don't think is separate from us because I'm a panentheist. But the Shire Free Church welcomes people of all religions, so you can be a Christian, a Muslim, Quaker, etc., whatever your preferences are, so long as you don't look at the state as God, so long as you don't worship the state, and as long as you're a peaceful person, you would be welcomed, I think, in the Shire Free Church.
Sounds right to me. A church is a form of organization. If whatever, you've got to file a few pieces of paper here and there with the government, I would prefer I don't ask for permission, but at times we have filed pieces of paper with them.
Can a person be a member of the Shire Free Church without living in this area? Like,
absolutely.
Live far away?
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that a person can be a Shire Society signer, they can sign the declaration. Now, again, just because you've signed the declaration doesn't mean you're a member of the church. Those are two separate things, but in order to be in the church, you do have to be a Shire Society declaration signer.
Wow.
So you do have to have that level of dedication to the ideas of freedom and hopefully and peace to take you into the Shire Free Church.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I've answered the question appropriately. Or
I don't think there is an easy guide to doing this because, frankly, the government's going to stand in your way every opportunity they get, unless your church says is the Christ-filled, holy, Jesus Spirit church of whatever. Then they're going anything that's sort of new and different. They're going to stand in the way of,
and that's what we're seeing happen with the Shire Free Church. The Shire Free Church has been denied the tax exemption on the church parsonage that we have here in Keene.
Because we called ourselves activists at one point.
Well, because they know we are activists, and the tax assessment board here in town.
Activists may not start a church.
Basically, that's what they said. I mean, she didn't use those terms exactly, but you're kind of paraphrasing what one of the tax assessors said when they denied the tax exemption. So you might be asking yourself, well, okay, guys, if you don't like the asking permission, why did you ask for the tax exemption? And the idea there was the perspective from the church, the way that the letter was written to the tax assessors board was that we are doing this as a courtesy to them to give them the opportunity to grant the exemption so as to not create further conflict, right? Because we know how the state people operate. If you don't do what they say, and that is pay property tax, they're going to steal that property from you, and then they're going to take it and they're going to sell it at an auction called a tax sale in order to get the money that they want for their property tax. And they're going to do that whether or not you call yourself a church. So the idea was let's put the ball in motion in their system, which is the reason why we have a nonprofit corporation, so we can interact with these people. I don't want to, but the government, they demand that you interact with them. So that's why we have this nonprofit corporation, and so it filed for the tax exemption was denied.
And we often, and rather than application and things like that, we'll say we are filing this as a courtesy
to your system.
Yeah, things like that.
Give them the opportunity to exit graciously from continuing to create conflict, which they haven't done. They're continuing to create conflict, and so next step is to go to court. Richie, he's in New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live, Richie.
Hey, I was calling about the Shire Free Church.
Okay, sure.
And your legal issues with that. There's a really good book. It's called Wicca and the Law. You might want to check out. It talks about because Wiccans have been going through their own legal battles with the government, claiming they're not a religion. And
I bet they have.
That.
Yeah, it's sort of new. This is the problem with being new.
Yeah. Because I bought the book because I was kind of concerned about, some nut job neighbor calling the police, trying to have social services take my kids away. But because Ian, you're a pantheist, am I right?
Yeah, panentheist.
Okay, that's technically a pagan religion. Yeah, pagan's kind of a broad term that it basically means any religion that's not one of the big three monotheistic faiths. So there are rights groups that actually defend people in these cases.
Yeah, well, the Shire Free Church has actually reached out to the Shire Free Church Monadnock specifically has reached out to a number of rights groups like the ACLU, the ACLJ, as well as the Rutherford Institute, and either they are just too busy to be concerning themselves with these matters, or they don't think it's a good case. I think that we're going to have to take this on our own, and that's the direction the church is going in at this point. It appears that the people of the legal profession are not interested in this particular matter, and that's unfortunate because it seems to me to be a pretty crystal clear freedom of religion case. Of course, we're talking about the Shire Free Church, which you can learn more about at church.shiresociety.com. And actually, it's not just the Shire Free Church. There's also the Peaceful Assembly Church. Dirk J. Have you been to Grafton just recently? Were you up there?
No, I've never been to Grafton, but I love their what they've got going on with their church.
Right, they do. They actually have a church building, like an actual steepled roof kind of
beautiful
church, like a classic New England style church. And
a pea stub that you can see from like Google Earth or something. They've got
in their parking lot. That's right. Yeah. And then they were denied in their tax exemption, and the Church of the Sword was also denied. So activist churches around New Hampshire, not just the Shire Free Church, are all under attack, and it's unfortunate. It's not a cheap thing to go to court. One attorney told us that it would probably cost tens of thousands of dollars if he were to be willing to take the case, and he wasn't so sure he wanted to take the case. So there you go. Richie, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, just that book has a lot of landmark cases in there that you might want to
Cool, and that's Wicca and the Law. Thanks for the recommendation, Richie. I appreciate hearing from you. Of course, we'll keep you in the loop as the Shire Free Church case continues to develop. Is freedom of religion actually respected by the government? I mean, we've certainly found that freedom of speech and your right to privacy, none of these freedoms are respected by the government. So I'm not expecting to have much success at this because they seem to just ignore all of their own rules in their own constitution.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.